Welcome to the Bringing Hope Home podcast. We're Bryce and Colette Schaefer, pastors, teachers, and madly in love empty nesters. We invite you into our home as we candidly share faith-filled, practical ways to build a strong and lasting marriage.
Welcome back once again with Bryce and Colette. We're glad you're with us on another episode of Bringing Hope Home.
That's right. And today we are talking about kind of a tough one, but how to rebuild trust in a marriage. You know, there's a lot of times that things happen, whether it be something big like infidelity or whatever, but there's trust that has been broken and needs to be rebuilt. And so we're going to be...
Right. And I even go as little as sometimes, we start nagging on our spouse because they forget to do something all the time. Right. And so we've just lost trust. And when we lose trust in any, whether it's big or small, usually then we're going to either get bitter, and then we're going to start compensating, and we're going to start, and when you start compensating, I don't know if you've ever been injured before, but you start compensating for a bad back or a hurt leg or whatever, and you compensate, and other muscles and other areas of your body take over. And a lot of times those then get out of alignment as well. And so rebuilding your trust, or even in the little things, needs to happen so you can run smoothly in your marriage. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter if it's a big thing or a small thing. If you feel like you are missing trust in a relationship, it needs to be dealt with right away.
Sometimes those small things can then build into
right. Again, you can get other issues in your body, so to speak, or in your marriage. So don't wait and say it'll go away on its own or whatever. So I'm excited about today, even though this is maybe a little bit of a harder topic. It's a topic that we can all glean a little bit from and put into practice in our marriages for sure.
And we're actually going to be talking about trust in an acronym. So you might want to grab a paper or something and take notes. This might be one to come back to. Hopefully we'll give you some good information here on building.
Right. And I think the first thing before we really step into it is, if there has been something that's happened because of an abuse, some kind of situation that is not healthy at all, to rebuild that trust, that needs to take a whole other turn, and to build back that trust in an abusive situation, probably we need to step far away from that situation as possible so we can be safe first, and then with the leading of the Lord, figure out what our next steps would be. So just wanted to mention that as well, and then you thought about it too, is, has this, mistrust happened before? Is it a reoccurring situation, or has it been just a one time? And because if it's a reoccurring, then we have to deal with it again, because you're going to start compensating a little bit differently, and it limits us on how you're going to, how we're going to respond a little bit. So just know the history of the situation. I mean, we're going to try to overall generalize it a little bit, but again, you can always come to us or somebody else for some marriage coaching or tips. You can get on to us into talking to us through email, through hello@schaeferministries.com, or some other form, or we can just actually coach a little bit. So anyway, so let's get into these.
All right. So the first one in trust is T, and it's for talk, right? So communication is huge, so we can't say it enough. And all of these steps that we're going to go through is going to be communication, different types of communication. But you have to communicate. If you're going to get through anything, this isn't the time to shut down and think that it's going to just blow over. Right? There's things that have been broken and need to be restored. And so We can approach communication and talking carefully, and you might have to approach it with somebody, with a mediator or someone that can kind of go through the situation with you. But communication is going to be
right.
big.
Right. Don't ever just clam up. That is, now we don't want you to explode either.
Yeah.
But it's really certainly key to continue to talk about things. And at first, I would even emphasize maybe over talking situations, because you want to make sure that everything is clear. The repeating, the mirroring of a situation or what their expectations are, whatever is fine. Because again, it's about talking and understanding for sure.
Now there is a time, we're going to talk about timing and everything like that. There is a process, and there is times that you might want to go away by yourself. You might need to have some self-reflection, right? So that kind of depends on the situation.
Right.
Sometimes just going in there and talking, you haven't sorted out your own feelings and what's going on, and so maybe going in there and communicating right away is not the best.
Right. And I would say the best place to start communicating with is the Lord.
Yeah.
I mean, really, just seek Him. Seek Him and His understanding for the situation. And as you do, let Him help you sift through your emotions and feelings and circumstances, and come out of your prayer closet with kind of a blueprint to talk through things. And,
so we're kind of hitting on all of these, and you're gonna see, because it all goes together. It's not step 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
So communication is in all of it.
Yeah, and so that's what we are putting it into an acronym. However, they weave together all of them. So number 2, or the
R of trust, is going to be rebuild. And to rebuild, sometimes you're going to have to demolish some things. You're going to have to go back to the basics, right? To rebuild and to go back to where the trust started breaking down, right? If you are rebuilding a house or doing any kind of construction, you're going to have to go back to where that problem spot is and do some work to take that out, right? We had a house in Oklahoma once that had mold. And so we had to go back with the walls, and you had to go back and try to...
all the way to the studs.
Right, all the way to the studs to get that cancerous mold out of there, right? So the same thing in a marriage. We're going to have to cut back some things and rebuild and start to rebuild. We do want to put it out there. Again, we have our Marriage Builders course. So if you are in a place that you have to rebuild, we have the tools to help you do that. And so it'll help you in this demolition and the rebuilding part, and gives you the tools, and we go into things more in depth. So the link to that will be down below.
Yeah, and get to the root of the situation. Don't just deal with the surface and the fruit of a situation, because then it's going to creep back up sometime or another unless you rebuild it.
Right.
And so again, get to the root of everything. The next one is to have understanding. And we kind of mentioned understanding already, because it's key to everything. And seek God's understanding first in it, and say, God, this is a sore spot in our marriage. This is a spot we need your help to lay your hand upon, and we know you have the answers.
So an understanding goes both ways, right? So the person that is doing the forgiving, or that it was against, or trying to build back trust, the other person's going to have to understand this might take some time, right?
Yeah, it's not an overnight issue.
Understand maybe past issues in their lives that, is causing the mistrust as well. Because you might be thinking, this isn't that big a deal. I don't know why they don't trust me, because it was just this one little thing. Well, maybe there's something in their past that maybe an ex-spouse, that they've experienced this thing over and over and over. And so,
or traumatic childhood.
right, there's a lot of different things. I mean, say an ex-spouse was cheating on them, and so maybe you just talk to somebody, but they don't trust you even talking because of their experience, right? So you have to have some understanding there of
that empathy.
Empathy, yep.
And then it really comes down to in understanding is valuing the other person.
Yeah.
And again, it's a two-way street, but I need to value their point of view, even if I don't think it's even valid. But because it's your spouse and because it's them and because it's their feeling or their issue, that's your issue as well. So value that and not make light of it. Right. You know, I've done that before where I've made light of issues before because I don't see the value in it. Mm-hmm. And that usually just digs a deeper hole. Mm-hmm. So understanding comes with empathy and value for sure. And then it also, the second part of understanding is understanding it takes time. There's baby steps to growth. Because we want everything just instantly to change, instantly to be better, instantly to be healed. But that isn't usually the reality of it all unless God gives us a miracle. Mm-hmm. And so we're definitely believing for miracles. We're definitely believing for things. And that's kind of where I have a verse of scripture here, and it's one of my favorites, and it's in Hebrews 6, verse 12. And the end part of that says, through faith and patience, they inherit the promises. So it's going to be a baby step process. It's going to be little by little. And so there's a timing, there's a process to it all, but know that in all this and understanding, there can be growth out of it, and there can be new life. Mm-hmm. And so that's key to the you and understanding for sure.
Now this next one for the S, you mentioned it already because this is actually the first thing that you should do, and it's seek God. Right? Matthew 6:33 says, seek first the kingdom of God, his righteousness, and all these things will be added. And over in the Bible, it talks about seek him. We need to seek his wisdom, right? Proverbs, all through Proverbs, it's seek his wisdom because he knows the situation. He knows each of you, your personalities, your history, and he knows the best way to approach this subject. So seeking him is number one. I mean, the Bible says you have the counselor on the inside, right? And so, others can help you through this, but we have that helper on the inside that will help guide you through, and just have to listen.
Right, and let the Lord encourage you.
Yeah.
Because maybe at the moment, nobody's going to encourage you in this situation. Your parents aren't, your other siblings aren't, your coworkers aren't. But once you've gotten in your prayer closet and seek the Lord, he's usually going to come out of there with direction for you to help you prosper. And a lot of times, if it's not an abusive situation where it needs to have a lot of different helps, that God wants to carry it forward, the marriage forward, and know that's what he wants and that's best. So he's going to encourage you out of that. And so sometimes you have to encourage yourself in the Lord, like David did, King David, mm-hmm. and just learn to seek what he has in store for the situation and how he's going to rebuild it back with your efforts and your obedience to his voice.
That's right.
Yep. And the last T in trust would be time. And we've already talked about that one a little bit as well, because it takes time. Baby steps, growth needs a process. But trust in an acronym of talk, rebuild, understanding, seek, and time. It kind of helps us have a process to all this. And it's not like the grieving process where we're going to just go through steps. It's a continual morphing of let's build upon each other and the efforts that we've made to rebuild. And I think the one we haven't really talked about, but is also mixed into all this, is forgiveness.
I was just going to bring that up because we haven't talked about that in the trust, but forgiveness is huge.
That happens first and then ongoing.
And the thing about forgiveness is you're not going to feel like it, and you're not going to feel like anything has changed. Forgiveness is an act of faith, which means that your feelings are not going to line up, right? It's just a choice that, no, I'm going to forgive. And then it's going to take some time, right? There's time, and there's all of those things that we talked about in trust still need to take place, but we can make the decision to forgive. Now, the decision to forgive doesn't mean that you just jump right back and everything is great, right? Because sometimes we need to put the brakes on, and sometimes we do need to put boundaries. And that's the other thing. If it is a thing of infidelity, the other spouse, maybe if you're the one that has had the affair, you need to be okay with check-ins and be okay with, things being put on your phone. So
tracking apps. So they can
so
see
your
what
spouse knows where you're going.
what you've looked at, and your text messages are double read, or whatever the case may be.
Allowing on your computer to see your history. Don't delete the history. Things like that. That's okay. That's okay to have boundaries and to build in what boundaries are going to help build that trust, right?
And what's the bigger picture, right? Is it your pride that's the bigger picture, or is it the marriage and the family is the bigger picture? I mean, you got to have that right vision, because that's too much, that's too much information. That's too much give on my part. It's not too much give if you're trying to save a marriage.
Right.
It's not too much give. Yeah, what's the most valuable here? And so it's not too much to ask if I care about the other person and their feelings. So, all this goes into play with this rebuilding trust in a marriage or in a relationship of any sort, really. And so what's that value? What's the goal of all this? And the goal is, again, a happy, healthy marriage.
Right.
For sure.
So we'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this subject? Or if you have any other questions regarding this, we would love to hear from you and to talk on any of those. That if you have a question or that you want to hear us further talk about this, we're open to that. So, yeah,
we're just so glad you joined us today. And again, comment below, go to our website, check us out and what we have to offer. But, it's just important that you have your eyes on God and going in the right direction. So anyway, we're glad you were with us today. And as we always say, bring hope home to your life today.
If you're listening on the Apple Podcast app, give us a 5-star rating and drop a review. If you're listening on Spotify, give us a follow. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. See you next week.